pleasure having you on the other side of the radio. It's time for us to take the conversation a notch higher. And this time we will be focused on the Port Harcourt Refinery beginning operations. Not exactly, but we will be focused on the fact that they are trying to privatize it now that it is working. Let's get your thoughts. Let's talk for development. I am Kaladako Rubatabo, and this is Hard Facts. Welcome. So, Presidency speaks on privatization of Port Harcourt Refinery and others. So, there is to talk about privatizing the Warri and Kaduna refineries as well. If you remember, sometime last week I think it was on Wednesday, I mentioned that the Kaduna refinery is believed that it will come on stream this December. Same with the Warri refinery. However, we're being told that the old Port Harcourt refinery, the 60,000 barrels per day refinery, is operational right about now. And you must have listened to Kiari when he spoke to newsmen in Port Harcourt. Also, Sunday Dare had earlier said that about 200 trucks will be loading petroleum products on a daily basis in the Port Harcourt or at the Port Harcourt refinery. But my focus is on the privatization. Now, it will make sense if the refineries are privatized. Remember, the refineries are under the control of the NNPCL. That is the how do I put it now? Once upon a time, the NNPCL was the state-owned oil company. That's the federal government oil company. However, it was commercialized, so it no longer belongs to the federal government on paper. Even though they currently hold the largest shares, on paper it is believed that they are supposed to be shareholders that own the NNPCL, with the federal government currently being the largest shareholder. However, we've hardly seen any report of people buying shares into the NNPCL. So it's a confusing one. Although it is believed that the NNPCL has been commercialized, with not so many shareholders, some people question the commercialization, because some people still say that the federal government may just have a huge control of the NNPCL, which the NNPCL has argued against in recent times, most especially when it comes to do with the monies gained after removal of subsidy. But it only makes sense if we go with what is on paper, that since the NNPCL has been commercialized, that the refineries should also be commercialized or at least privatized. And so Sunday Dare, in one of his tweets, mentioned that the plans to privatize these refineries, about 3 of them, is on the way. The plan to do it, or plans to do it, are on the way. Now, the presidency, according to Premium Times now, has announced that plans for the complete privatization of Nigeria's state-owned refineries are currently underway. Now, Sunday Dare, the special advisor, media and public communications to President Bola Tinubu, disclosed this in a reforms tracker posted on his X handle on Sunday. The tracker highlights the key milestones achieved by Mr. Tinubu's administration in the oil sector. And I read: food privatization of Port Harcourt, Warri, Kaduna refining in the works, local oil refining and production to peak steadily, with Dangote and modular refineries active, with full local refining capacity gradually being met, days of few queues to end, it said. I saw another report that said that the federal government is hopeful that is it NNPCL now? I can't remember, but there is the hope that the 2 million barrels per day target will be met before the end of this year. So, there's so much celebrations going on in the government and like you must have heard during the news update, the federal government, the president now, has mandated the NNPCL to ensure that the Warri and Kaduna refineries are working in the nearest time possible. And, orders like this is what I would say get some people to argue that NNPCL must just still be under the control of the federal government. But what are your thoughts? Is privatization the way to go? Because some people have argued that government should not be in business, even though I don't think that is 100% correct. I mean, you look at countries like Dubai, like the UAE. Dubai is in the UAE. You look at countries like Qatar. They do have their own state-owned oil companies, and they're thriving, very much thriving. But then when you look at Nigeria Airways, for instance, you look at Nitel, for instance. There were several occasions when the federal government attempted to privatize Nitel, and it just fell. It failed, right? You talk about NEPA. Although we have several, what's it called now? Several distribution companies. We've got the PHEDC, for instance, or we've got the BEDC. We've got several of them, right? Despite all of it, some people would claim that there has been little or no improvement in the power sector. Okay, good. You talk about NAFCON. You remember NAFCON, right? Some people say, Indorama is doing well, and that's a valid argument, very valid argument. But when you look at a lot of the attempts at privatizing companies that were run by government in the past, one can help but worry if the refineries will tour the same path or will end up with the same results. Now, let's look at it from a positive perspective. The telecommunication sector. Although Nitel failed in the privatization process, when we look at the government hands-off policy when it comes to telecommunications, we can argue that sector has thrived. The other day, Obasanjo was boasting of how the country made about $1.2 billion from sales of licenses to telecommunications operators, like MTN, Glo, and I think Econet at the time. What that means is, although I'm not in total acceptance of the theory that government should not be in business, when we take a look at the telecommunication sector, where the government has a hands-off policy and it only plays the regulatory role, we see some level of efficiency in that sector, even though we can still argue that much more can be done, because we have about 40 to 30% of how do I put it now? When you talk about penetration of the telecommunication sector, there are about 40 or 30 to 40% areas where they have not been able to penetrate. So then the question is, although we still have these lapses, we can still argue that there is some level of development in the telecommunication sector, when especially compared to when it was just Nitel and the government operating that sector. So should we privatize the refineries? Are we going to see some level of efficiency? Because when we also look at the oil sector, we look at NNPC when it was fully under the control of the government, and then we look at the IOCs, for instance. The IOCs were always more efficient, when we look at the statistics, let's be honest now. So the question then is, will private investors manage it properly? But if they do, will they crash the price? Of course, when you look at the telecommunication sector, once again, the competition, the high competition has seen over the years the crashing of tariffs, coal tariffs, data tariffs. So should we let more investors come in? Maybe one company buys off the Port Harcourt refineries, another one comes and buys off the Warri refinery, same with the Kaduna refinery. Will that bring about competition? Will that, allow that industry, that sector to thrive? What is your opinion? But then it means that the people can no longer cry to the government for subsidies. It means that the people can no longer ask the government for palliatives in that sector, because it will be fully privatized and it will be deregularized. So is that what Nigerians want? Or do Nigerians want government to be in business? If government is in business, there's the likelihood that it will crash, like Nigeria Airways did a couple of times. I've got a commercial. When I do come back, I'll open the phone lines. Please just stay tuned.
For more talk,
Go to the phone lines now, 5:33 p.m. Greetings to you. It's time for you to air your views on the issue that I've put on the review. This is Hard Facts. I am Kaladako Rubasiva. For those of you joining us, you're welcome. Let's start with messages. I realized I didn't read enough messages the last hour, so I'm going to try reading as much messages. And the conversation basically is about the refineries in Nigeria. About three of them, the Port Harcourt, Kaduna, and Warri refineries. And they talk about privatization. Like I said, Sunday Diary posted on X yesterday that the process is underway. And I'm asking, is that the right way to go about the refinery so we don't have, a start and stop situation like we've seen? We would have a more efficient, robust refining system in the country, and there will be competitions. We've seen how Dangote is very passionate about his refinery because it is private, it's his business, it's investment, so he's very, very passionate about it. But it also means that if we privatize all of them, then to talk about subsidy, palliatives, and all the likes in that sector will be a thing of the past completely. That's what it means. For if it is privatized, I wonder if it will crash the price the way government would have crashed it if it was state owned. These are some of the intrigue cases I like us to look at while we are touching this very conversation. So what are your thoughts? And if it's going to be privatized, do you think it's something that the state government, maybe in partnership with some one for state, that's the case? But what are your thoughts? I'm just thinking out loud, and I'm wondering what you think. It and heartless, and they don't mean well for the entire masses. It has been an LNG model. Government business work in other countries except in Nigeria because we are deeply rooted in corruption. And I think that NLNG model could also be the Indorama model. I stand to be correct. But let's come here. And this one says, AJ from Romalogu. It is good news to hear that Port Harcourt Refinery has commenced operations, but if it actually commences operations as the news is everywhere, then they are making it possible so that they can claim ownership of it. The privatization they are hinting is the reason they are making the refinery work, so they can buy these refineries and still increase the price in the long run. Now, it's brought another wonderful conversation to the fore. Remember that about 1.5 billion, yeah, was spent in rehabilitating, the Port Harcourt refinery. Now let's come here. This one says it will be better for the federal government to privatize the three refineries than being managed by politicians who will likely take advantage of their tenure in power to swindle the huge financial benefits from the petroleum industry into their private bank accounts. I pray Port Harcourt Refinery shouldn't be collapsing like our national power grid. Thank you. Emioka Monday JP from Okpata Kingdom in Ekpe land. And this one says, let's give it a try. Privatization is not a bad idea since government is in the part, or since government in this part of the world is not good at managing business because of corruption. I support the calls for privatizing the refineries. However, it should not be given to political cronies. The reason privatization failed in the past is because it was the same people in government that it was privatized to. Okay, to themselves and their friends. They should privatize it, but government should have shares so that it can also be regulated somehow. From Hector. This one says Port Harcourt Refinery has started production today, right? If it is true, then it is one of the good news so far this year. But let me wait to see the product myself first, especially the price to be reduced to 300 naira. Again, I don't support it to be privatized at all. From Dumale Monday. All right, Dumale Monday, thank you very much for your thoughts there. But let's quickly take a listen to Mele Kyari, the GCEO of NNPCL. All right. The soundbite seemingly is loading. Poor network, I guess.
But this all won't work except you have the thing that must be done. We are here celebrating this success. And many more will come. This country will be great. There is great hope in this country, and that will support Mr. President's initiative.
All right, let's come here. 92.3 Nigerian for your name, your location, your contribution, please.
Yes, good evening, Kalada.
Yeah, greetings to you. Welcome.
Yes, I go with the.
Are you there?
Yes, the best thing for us as a nation, considering that the Indroma is working. If they are privatizing, it should not be to Nigerian, at least to a foreigner. Perhaps a company like Owandu that is assume that the president is directly connected to. So I think the right thing should be done. They should make the process public. Let us know. Scrutinize the company. Know what stuff they are made of.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much for your thoughts there. 92.3 Nigerian for your name, please.
Kalada, good evening.
Yeah, what's your name, please?
Yeah, Alozie King.
Alozie King, welcome. Let's get your thoughts.
For me, I don't support or buy to advertising the Port Harcourt refinery.
Okay.
Kalada, this refinery, the federal government spent millions of dollars rather, in repairing it.
Mm.
And you see, many of us Nigerians have this perception that the government per se is not a good manager of a business. I don't subscribe to that saying. Now, the government does not have the charisma to manage business. But most of these persons who headed this government will use government money allegedly to open a business, to run a company, and those companies will stand. Kalada, it is because of our recalcitrant nature we have in Nigeria that is making public sectors not to work. Let me use, for example, if you go to the state secretariat on a Monday morning, you will see a permanent secretary coming to work by 11:30. If I am an MD of an established organization and you are my manager, I resume work by 8 o'clock. You are my manager, you are coming to work by 11:30. You take your sack letter by 2 o'clock. So the issue of this, we cannot manage, it will not work.
Right.
It's because people who are saddled with responsibility to checkmate these persons who are working in these private sectors are not following to the due course.
All right, then.
That is the reason why things we have in this country will not work.
All right, Mr. King, I've got to go.
If we continue to privatize everything, one day this country lay down on, to lay hand on. So
Right.
it's an unfortunate situation that people who are in government that will deploy the necessary mechanism to produce our own, to make our own to flourish, will be privatizing it, put it in their pocket.
Alozie King, thank you very much. Thank you very much. You don't buy the idea. Let's go to the next caller, 92.3 Nigeria Info.
Kalada, this
Yeah.
is Lawson calling from Yenekwa.
Well, Lawson, you're on a streak today. Welcome.
Let us not deceive ourselves. Government can't manage these refineries. Over the years, do you know when these refineries were built? How well have they served us? Do you know what Obasanjo told us? He wanted from day one to privatize this university, these refineries. It's because he couldn't find anybody. So much
No, he did privatize it, but Yaradua came. No, Lawson, he did privatize it actually, but Yaradua rescinded the process, reversed the process rather.
That's what I'm good. Yaradua rescinded, so he did not see the light of the day. Buhari himself wanted to. The National Assembly refused. Now, if you look at it, forget what happened in the power sector. The power sector in 2013 was privatized to people who do not have capacity. That was the problem. They don't have capacity. So, for me, if we don't privatize this refinery, I can tell you it will not last long. The level of corruption that is in that refinery, public servants, you see. If you know how corrupt they are, I'm telling you, will not make that mistake.
All right, then.
The only time it can work is in the hands of the private sector.
All right, I've got to go.
I'm telling you the truth.
All right, then.
Thank you.
Mark it down, he says. The only way is for it to be privatized. Do you agree? He says the public sector is too corrupt. Public servants are corrupt, he says. Let's come here. He says, it will be better if Port Harcourt Refinery is privatized. If government continues to run it, soon as it will still go into comatose. A lot has been spent in the turnaround maintenance of that refinery, and I consider that as a waste. John from Port Harcourt. Let's come here. This one says, let the government privatize the refineries by adopting the petrochemical and NLNG modules for effectiveness and successful operations. Again, instead of NMPCL overseeing the refineries, a commission like the NCC overseeing Nitel should be in place. JB from Woji. But even with the NCC, Nitel was still Nitel, you know what I mean. But let's come here. This one says the government should own up and manage its facilities, because I do not trust the move to privatize the refineries, that as it will end up in the hands of few politicians against the wishes of the people. We couldn't cover that one. And finally, this one says liberalization, privatization, and deregulation are words synonymous with diluting government monopoly of an industry. In this case, the petroleum industry. This will be good if they are sold to enemies. The fuel subsidy regime was replete with cringe-worthy levels of corruption to the tune of trillions of naira. This will create room for competition, efficient refining, and reduction of fuel price. I've got to go. Do stay tuned to 92.3 Nigeria Info.